Hello, fellow historians. I'm Andrea Henderson, and for our research this week, I focused on the lived experiences of American service members during the Battle of Okinawa, as I expect to see evidence of this in primary sources later as I examine the language of letters home. So not simply looking at what happened, but how scholars help us understand what it felt like to fight there and how those experiences are reconstructed. Rear Admiral Robert Caldwell's article, Intelligence and the Okinawa Battle, approaches the battle through intelligence work, but what makes it valuable is that it is also experiential. Writing as the former chief of photo intelligence for the operation, Caldwell argues that aerial photography was decisive, not just strategically, but psychologically. Commanders' confidence, morale, and decision-making were shaped by what intelligence officers could or could not see. His narrative shows how uncertainty, time pressure, and responsibility weighed heavily on individuals whose judgments affected tens of thousands of lives. The experience here is not trench level, but cognitive and moral. The burden of knowing that an error could mean catastrophe. Dale Floyd's article entitled Cave Warfare on Okinawa shifts to the physical experience of combat. His core argument is that the Japanese cave system fundamentally transformed how Americans had to fight, forcing engineers and infantry into close quarters, brutal encounters that differed sharply from earlier Pacific battles. Floyd's descriptions of sealing caves, deploying demolition squads, and suffering high casualty rates among engineers specifically underscore how Okinawa produced a grinding, exhausting form of warfare. The American experience here is one of proximity, repetition, and attrition rather than dramatic maneuver. Floyd's conclusion is clear. Okinawa demanded tactical adaptation at immense human cost. Rodney Walton's article, Memories from the Edge of Abyss, confronts a different problem: how we know what soldiers experienced in the first place. Using oral histories from Okinawa veterans, Walton argues that these accounts are generally reliable, but shaped by the structure of memory. Veterans were generally reticent to speak about the battle initially, and then Walton proposes a few theories of why that might have been. But those that did grant interviews for oral histories did so later in life, and they recalled early moments of the combat with clarity, while later phases of the campaign were often blurred or compressed. Walton's conclusion is methodologically important. Lived experience survives in memory, but historians must interpret it carefully. And what this tells us about experience is that trauma may contribute to how the brain organizes or reorganizes information and recall. And as historians, we must be aware of the impact of profoundly emotional or stressful events and what the impact is on memory. Finally, Michael Snape's God and Uncle Sam adds a layer of experience that's often missing from military operational histories. Snape argues that combat frequently intensified religious behavior, not only before the battle, but especially afterward, as soldiers sought to interpret survival itself. Drawing on chaplain reports and surveys, he shows that service members turned toward faith as a coping mechanism, a way to impose moral order on chaos. While researching a similar question, I explored that post-battle search for meaning firsthand in a filmed project at Shuri Church here on Okinawa. It's a site where chaplains confronted moral and spiritual aftermath of Okinawa. The experience of Okinawa, therefore, was not only physical and psychological, but existential. Soldiers were asking not just how to cope, but what survival meant. Taken together, these four works demonstrate that the American experience at Okinawa cannot be reduced to casualty figures or tactical summaries. It was different lived experiences of psychological pressure, terrain challenges, belief, and faith. Understanding these experiences requires us to analyze multiple dimensions simultaneously. Thank you for watching.